Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today.
Welcome, Kathy.
Hi.
Today we have CJ Hosack. She is a fantasy author. Is it YA fantasy or is it adult?
Young adult, yeah.
Young adult. Okay, this awesome. My favorite topic. So CJ was on maybe the third or fourth season. I can't remember exactly, with her new release, The Slayer's Magic. And that's in the Beads of Bone series. And now you're going to have a new release. I saw in 12 days.
Yeah.
The Traveler's Magic. So which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, we can talk a little bit about the Slayer's Magic since it leads into the Traveler's Magic. They go together. The Traveler's Magic is the second book in the, well, I guess it's going to be a trilogy, so there's three books. So I actually wrote all three before I got my publisher.
Oh, great.
And then I hadn't looked at the first book in like, I don't know, a couple, 2 or 3 years because I was writing the next books, but I was querying it. And then my publisher, when he offered to publish it, he read The Slayer's Magic, the original version, and he had some suggestions of things he wanted me to pull out of it. I had a lot of playing with magic. I had them a little bit younger, and he was like, pull all that out. And then so I went back and reread it and realized that the voice was too young. So I realized I had to embark on completely rewriting it from scratch.
Oh, that's a lot.
Because I knew I can't, this voice is not something you can change like just by tweaking here and there. It's so,
Right.
nah, I need to rewrite this. And I had already gotten feedback on this book by that point, and I had some different ideas of how I wanted to, what direction I wanted to go. I wanted to seed some things that are going to happen in this book, in the first book. So yeah, I completely rewrote it.
Yeah, I've talked to a number of authors that say it's good to have, like, if you have a series, have them all written before you publish them, because that way you can go back and make sure everything lines up and you can allude to some things that are going to happen in the future and make sure everything's congruent. I haven't followed that piece of advice, but I would give people that piece of advice having done what I've done.
Well, I think it's okay if you have a publisher or if you're self-publishing to have them all done. But I know I went to the writing conference and I sat with an author for a blue pencil, which is where they kind of, you give them like 3 pages and they'll like answer questions or mark it up for you, whatever. And I told her that I had written all 3 already, and she just went pale. She's like, oh no, you're gonna have to rewrite them or throw out huge chunks of it. And I was like, okay, which is what ended up happening anyway. So,
well, I mean, but everybody's different. Every person you talk to is probably going to have a different opinion.
yeah.
Okay, but jump us into your world. Start
Okay.
out with the Slayer's Magic. Tell us the characters, the setting, what's going to happen.
So, the Slayer's Magic, I'm adopted, and I really wanted to explore that in a book, in a story. And so my main character is adopted in a world. And I sat down and thought, well, what kind of magic would really emphasize and drive home the fact that you're adopted? And so clearly a hereditary magic that you have to prove your bloodlines in order to inherit.
Oh.
So we have a library, but it's not exactly a library. It's not your neighborhood library friendly down the street. It's more of an archive for the world, and it's in this library is kept all of the records for everyone's bloodlines, birth records, death records, marriage records, land records, all kinds of records, along with, you know, history books and, you know, all the things that you would find kind of in a library. And there's also some objects, so it's also kind of a museum. And in the first book, my protagonist Ren, she's growing up in a community now. It's not to be confused with the rest of the world, because not the entire world has magic, but she's growing up in the community there where they do.
Okay.
Like they're all descendant from the ancestors, and they all have magic, and she does not. And so she feels like she doesn't fit in, especially because when you're adopted, at least for me and some people I know, when you're adopted, there's this odd feeling with your adopted parents, no matter how much they love you and adore you, and it's like you feel like you don't quite fit in. Like there's a little bit of a disconnect. Like no matter how much, you know, they wanted you and all of that, you still kind of feel like, you know, because nobody really looks like you. And so for her, the magic is what's really emphasizing this to her, that she doesn't fit in, is that she doesn't have magic. So that's kind of driving that feeling home. And she gets in her best friend, who was also adopted, didn't used to have magic, but she just got one of hers. So in this world, you inherit one magic from your mother and one magic from your father. So the magic that you pass on is, if you're a girl, you pass on your mother's line, and if you're a boy, you pass on your father's. So, but you get one from your father and one from your mother. So there's a new tutor at the library taking on students. It's kind of a you know, write an essay, prove, you know, kind of submit your resume and how you want to be a researcher or something like that, and he would take on students. So Ren's mother doesn't really want her to look for her birth family, for obvious reasons. You know, she loves her daughter and really wants to be, you know, wants to be that mother that's everything to her, and doesn't really want her to need someone else or want to find someone else. But Ren really wants magic, so she goes to the library too. She applies to this class, and through a little fudging, because you're supposed to be of ancestor descent to be a student, she kind of pretends that she is, and she gets in to this class. And the story is all about what she finds, and how the tutor manipulates them to look for things that he's looking for in the library. And there's some little bit of power and intrigue going on. And yeah, so that's sort of the first part. In the second book, The Traveler's Magic, Ren is now working in the library. Spoiler. But still hasn't found her birth family, but she's still looking. And so there's a magical barrier that surrounds the library. And it protects it from pests. So like in an archive, when I wrote the book in the first place, I put pests in library, and people were like, so I'm like, okay, nobody's an archivist. We need to make this a little more clear. So there's magical barrier surrounding library doesn't let pests in, and we open the book with a mouse in the library.
So
And
something has happened to the magical barrier.
something's happened, and it looks like sabotage, and we're trying to find how this happened and who would do this.
Interesting. So it seems like maybe somebody's trying to steal something from the library, or
Maybe.
maybe. But we're continuing to follow Rin in the Traveler's Magic, correct?
Well, I have two protagonists. It's flip-flops between their point of view. The other protagonist is Zoe. He is their parents are dating, and so he's so he's the guy her mom's dating son. Zoe does have magic. He's of ancestor descent. His magics are fire and healing, but he kind of rejects his healing magic because his mother was a little bit obsessive about it and was trying to push him into it. She really wants him to kind of be, she never had a girl, so she doesn't have that person to inherit that will run it, keep her line going, and she only had two boys, so she's kind of pushing him to be that prodigy that she doesn't really get to have as not having a girl. So he kind of rejects it, and it's kind of his journey through book one to kind of embrace. He discovers there's a physician in Watch the town who he doesn't use magic to heal. He uses like regular, like what we would use, like different herbs and medicines and that sort of thing, like normal ways of healing. And he gets apprenticed to him and discovers that he really enjoys, helping people to heal, but he hasn't quite embraced his healing magic yet. And because he has that kind of trauma from his childhood. So book one is sort of his exploration of that. And book two, he comes to embrace it, but something goes terribly wrong.
And is he the same friend who's also adopted?
No.
Okay, it's a different friend. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And is there a romance story here anywhere?
So Zoe is gay, and he meets a guy who he falls in love with. He meets him in book one, and they're continuing story through book two.
And
yeah,
neat. And so you said this is going to be a trilogy. What comes next?
What comes next? Wow, well, there's a lot of spoilers there.
Oh, don't give away too much then.
In book three, we're definitely going to see so the book two is kind of a mystery. We're trying to solve what's going on with the library. Book three is going to be more of a quest. There's some objects that they're so the magic is passed down through beads of bone. So the ancestors' bones, that they wear the bones, and then they can communicate. The ancestor gives them lessons. There's some beads of bone from the original person who gave them the magic, and it's rumored that they're out there, and so they're going to hunt those down so that so can fix some things with his magic and and Ren can hopefully find her birth family.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if she gets those bones, if they're not her ancestry, then they won't help her with the magic,
Mm-mm.
right? Okay,
Mm-mm.
interesting. Well, I mean, it seems like you wouldn't even have to end that as a trilogy. I mean, if they have sort of like different quests each book, you could keep this world going forever.
Yeah, well, my my brother and I, who's Zoe is patterned after, um, we were talking about writing something based in that world, but in a different part of the world. So where the Slayer's magic takes place is very Pacific Northwest, Puget Sound, this area. Like the city of Watch, I imagine would be like kind of where Anacortes sits, right on the edge of the sound there, and the islands are on the other, just across the water from there. This story would take place on the same world, but someplace tropical.
Okay, neat.
Tropical
And is
islands.
it gonna be another magic system or the same magic system or no magic or?
It's
you know?
gonna be, it's not the ancestor magic. I have 3 different magic systems that are actually at play here.
Oh, okay.
It's the one that the ancestor magic it's from actually from off world. The Slayer, the Dragon Slayer, that's where the Slayer's magic comes from.
Okay.
The Dragon Slayer came from a different planet, different world, and brought this magic with him. But there's a magic that's native to the world itself.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that's where the magic that would be in that book would come from. It's just
Okay.
natural magic from there.
Right.
Their world.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
seems like an amazing, like intricate world that you've built here.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you write the 3 books and you have to come up with all this world building for, all of the story, and then you rewrite it again. It kind of keeps getting, and it's hard because I have it all in my head. Well, not most of it. A lot of it's written down, but a lot of this world building's in my head from having written previous stories. So uh it's weird because it's like when I write it out, then my readers who read it for me, for my beta readers who read it, are like, wait, what's going on? And I forget that it's not on the page, it's like
Oh, okay, yeah.
book, or it's in my head and I'm not putting it out on the page really well. So yeah.
Well, that's exciting that you got your book picked up by a publisher. How has your experience been with them?
Good. It's I'm enjoying, he's really good. We work together editing wise, really good. He's he works pretty hard. He's decided that we're getting a different cover for the Slayer's magic, actually, so it matches the Traveler's
Oh,
magic.
okay. Yeah, but both of your covers, I like both of them. So.
Yeah, so it looks more like this.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So he decided so he's been pretty proactive about stuff, and so yeah, we work pretty well together. His edits are really good for me. He's usually right.
I know. When you get an edit back, it takes me a minute. Like I look at it and I read them once, and I get kind of hurt and like
Yeah.
and then I have to put them down and take a day and then come back. So
A lot of times my beta readers will come back with notes, and I'll be like, I don't know. And then he'll come back with the same thing, and I'll be like, all right, fine.
okay, I guess it's right then.
They're usually right, but sometimes I'm like a little stubborn about it. And then when he says no, then it's like, okay, fine.
Fun. Well, how did you become a writer?
Um, well, when my kids were really little, I'm a historian, so I like writing. I always dreamed of writing a book, either a historical book or fictional. And when my kids were really little, I couldn't go back to school, so I decided to write fiction, and I wrote a book. But this was pre-internet or very early internet, and I I wrote the book, I printed it out, I handed it out to a bunch of people. Nobody could read it, like get past the first few pages. So it was pretty disheartening, and I decided, well, I'm just not talented enough, so I gave up writing. And then about 20 years later, I came across now that we have internet, and there are authors who like post their lectures online and things like that. I came across a lecture that's like, no, you are a writer, why do you have to, why is it when people tell you you're writing, the first thing I ask you is when you're going to be published? Like, right, it's good for you. Writing's good for you. Just, you don't have to be involved in all the publishing stuff, it's an art. It's healing, and it's therapeutic, and it's all these things. Obviously, I'm writing about, my traumas for me adopted and stuff. So, yeah, so I just, I finally realized, wow, I am a writer. So, and I was like, oh, can I really do this? I was kind of scared. And then I didn't tell anybody. I didn't say anything to anybody for a couple months, and I just sort of mulled it over for a while. And then I decided, okay, I'm gonna first of the year, I'm gonna do some world building and see if I can flesh out this story. And I did that for a couple months, and then it's okay. Now I'm gonna start writing it. And I wrote the first draft of the Slayer's Magic, of the original version, in a month and a half.
Wow, that's quick.
Yeah, well, it was during COVID, so I didn't really have much to do. So, yeah, and I just kept writing book 2 and book 3, and then I learned, I started listening to podcasts, and discovering conferences and going to conferences, and learning more and more about the industry. And I don't know, I don't know, it's just been a journey. It's always a journey. I'm curious about how you did with your second, coming out with, the first book is different. Like, everybody's got their attention on it, right? All your friends and family and everybody knows, like, woo, and they all buy it. And then, like, the second book is like kind of drops off.
With people
What's your experience?
I mean, if they like your genre, then they're going to buy your book and they're going to read your book. Well, I guess there's a lot of different kinds of readers. Like, some readers, if they like your writing style, they're gonna buy every book that you write, right? And some readers, if they like fantasy and you write fantasy and you release the next fantasy book, then they're gonna read fantasy. But like, I have one friend, and we became friends over Twilight, and we were like obsessed with Twilight. Like, I had Twilight parties. I mean, we were like really in. I mean, we had young kids, and this was our escape. And yeah, we did all the games, we did everything together. So when I released my fantasy, I was super excited that she would just love it. And she's like, oh no, I don't like vampires and magic and fantasy. It was only the romance story that I liked. And I was like,
Oh,
what? Like, I mean, we're still friends. I didn't cut her off, but Yeah, it was very shocking to me that I was like, she's like, no, I don't really like supernatural. And I was like,
You're like, oh no.
anyway, so, but the other thing is when you finish a series, your readership goes up because the series is finished. So my finished series gets a lot more read through. And it's funny, I just had a big ask from my email group about series and what people liked or didn't like about series and if people read them or not. And a lot of them said, I'm not going to read. I will put that out.
Okay.
And a lot of them said, I will not read a series until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's all those different aspects. So if people like your first book, they're going to read your second book, whether or not they're friends of yours. But you may have that effect a little bit if they just read it because to be nice and they didn't really, like that genre or particular, so.
I think I've got a lot of friends and family who bought it just to be nice.
Well, and they might still buy it just to be nice. I mean, you would hope.
It just seemed like there was more interest. My publisher does like Kickstarter, backer, he does crowdfunding for his books. And so there was just a lot more people trying to use that platform for my first book than the second book. So I don't know. I was just curious about what your experience is with second books and this like dropping off and into the second book. But I think you're right. I did have someone we were traveling home from visiting our kids and we had a layover in Denver and old roommate of my husband's, him and his wife, we stayed with them the night because we needed to lay over for a night. And the wife came and she was so excited. She had my bookmark and she was like, I'm so excited to read it. And I'm like, great. And she's like, but I'm not going to read it till the series is done.
Oh, yeah. So
I'm like, okay.
the series, and that's another good reason why to make it a short series and then do like a spin-off series and another spin-off series
Yeah.
and a sequel and a novella. So.
Yeah. And the audio, and there's a lot of people too don't want to read, they want the audiobook. So the audiobook's coming out for the Slayer's Magic is coming out end of April, finally.
Okay, well, definitely email me and let me know when that comes out because I'm a big audiobook listener. I love audiobooks. How did you decide to you said you wanted to write a story about adoption or experiences with adoption. How did you decide to make it fantasy versus something that was more realistic?
Well, originally my idea, because when I had that failed novel 20 years ago, I was really frustrated. And one of my friends is also a writer, and he's like, well, I'll help you, get better at writing. And so he was giving me like story prompts or whatever to write short stories. And I was writing short stories, and I wrote this little short story about me and my brother. So I have the same situation as in my book, like in my life. I have my mom and his dad were dating, and then that's how we met, and we became really good friends. Our parents never married, but we feel like we're siblings anyway. And so I had written a little short story just inspired by the silly things we did when we were kids, when the parents went out, little pretend sort of things. And I thought, well, this might make like a fun, it was the only story that everybody kind of really liked. So this would make a fun, like, I should expand on this and make it like a little short, little like middle grade books or something, right? Short little series. And then I again was listening to lectures online, and I just decided I've always been, I was a sci-fi fantasy lover when it was very uncool. I mean, like you like I had to hide it. Like only boys liked
Oh,
science fiction and fantasy when I was growing up. Girls weren't allowed to like that, you know. It was not a girl thing. And so I was a closet. I was reading Terry Brooks and Alan Dean Foster when I was very young. I was very into science fiction and fantasy. So I just was like, I could take this story and of these two characters and I could make it a fantasy, and I should, because
fun.
that's my genre. So
Yeah, write what you love, right?
yeah,
Neat.
for sure.
Well, it has been super fun learning all about your books. Let us know where we can find you and your books.
My website is cjhosack.com. Both of the books are on Amazon, and you usually have to, because it's indie published, you usually have to put in the whole title, The Slayer's Magic, and then my name, CJ Hosack, in order for it to pop up.
Okay.
Usually if you just type in The Slayer's Magic, a lot of times it doesn't come up. Or The Traveler's Magic. And it's also Barnes and Noble online, not in the stores, but online. There are, and your local indie bookstore, depending on who their distributor is, might be able to order it for you.
Oh, fun.
I thought that any bookstore could order it, but last year when The Slayer's Magic came out, one of my friends went to their local bookstore and they went, "Oh no, we can't get it." So yeah, they might be able to. You can go in and ask.
Great. Well, CJ Hosack is CJHOSACK with The Slayer's Magic and The Traveler's Magic out March 12th?
4th. Actually 4th.
March
They got
4th.
moved up. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
a week, well, almost less than a week now.
March 4th, 2025.
I actually turned it in the manuscript and he went, "This is great. We're moving up the date." I was like, "Okay."
Congratulations again. And definitely when you publish the third book, come back and tell us all about it.
Awesome. I'd love to.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.